Yeah, let's have some fun with this. I'm just going to get right into it. Hey there, Knicks fans. Can you see the smile on my face? Can you hear the smile on my face? If you're listening to this just via podcast, well, if you're watching on YouTube, you can certainly see it. Boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I am joined by my also very happy co-host. His red hair is shining, glimmering, if you will. Jeremy Cohen. Jeremy, how are you, my friend?
I'm great. You know, I've heard before that when I get happy, it just, my hair sheens and shines, you know, it catches a blaze, it sets fire to everything around me. So you've got to, like, if you want a social distance because of COVID, 6 feet, you got to do that in normal circumstances just because my hair gets too hot. So, you know, I'm a great, how can you watch that game and not feel amazing? Because the funny thing is that I was expecting a loss. Yeah. I'm at my girlfriend's parents' place, and I was saying before I went to watch the game, I was like, all right, well, they said have fun. I was like, I won't. They're playing against probably the best team in basketball, at least regular season wise, around there.
Top 2 or 3, yeah.
Right, yeah. And now I just feel amazing because again, I was gonna be like, all right, well, it's 0-3. You know, like I personally don't take stock into games for at least like the first 9 or 10, as I've said before. And that's still true. And yet I'm also just going to disregard that completely because this game was so amazing that, again, I'm joking, but the whole point is like,
no, but
all three
there's
games
validity to what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Because you can brush some stuff off when it's like, okay, this takes time.
Yep.
But when it doesn't take time and it happens faster, you are allowed to put stock into that. So
yeah. And again, like everything that we've seen through these 3 games, all of it matters. It's just we don't know how much it matters until we get a larger sample size. It's like this game could mean everything and a sign of what's to come. Like the shots that we saw tonight and that we've seen the last couple games are indicative of how the Tibbs offense is looking. And even though they don't have the personnel, it looks good. It's inspiring to see what just from an efficiency standpoint and frequency and accuracy is a little less great, but it feels like they have played what? I mean, there've been 6 halves. It feels like there have been 4 good to great halves against 3 really good teams, 3 teams that made the playoffs last year in the East. And that's awesome. That's fantastic. So, you know, and you're immortalized in a Pixar movie. I thought that the joke was hilarious.
I haven't seen it yet.
It was great. It's the way also that it was done. It wasn't like haha LOL Knicks. It was just like a very tongue-in-cheek, cute way of doing it, and I loved it. And if anyone was upset about it, like, guys, it was hilarious. We're immortalized in a Pixar movie. It's okay. It's fine.
So I want to take a step back because again, a little behind the curtain here. We don't prep a lot for these pods. Just going to throw this out there. We kind of talk on Sunday, and because we don't want to ever present something that's not of the moment and topical. And the nice thing about me and Jeremy is we're both obsessives and we think about this shit all week long. So it's not like we have to sit and be like, oh, let's think about what we're going to talk about because we think about it all week long. So I just kind of went into today and I was like, I guess we'll just talk about the games. And that was the extent of our prep. And then I started thinking, I'm like, man, they're going to lose tonight and they're probably going to lose by a lot. And we're going to get on here and we are going to have to toe the line between talking people off the ledge and also being fair about the problems that exist on this team, right? And they won by 20 points tonight against, as you said, a very, very, very good team. And they did it in impressive fashion. We'll get to the game in a bit because I think there's a lot worth digging into. But as JB always pushing against the grain. Leave it to JB. If you say the sky's blue, he's going to say it's red. He tweeted out a little while ago, like, look, all the problems that were on this, roster, they're still there. Like those problems didn't get solved tonight. But at the same time, not just tonight, but as you were saying, Jeremy, we now have 3 games worth of evidence. And really, we kind of have 7 games worth of evidence because I think Tibbs certainly treated the preseason like a real thing. I think the players, to a certain extent, treated the preseason like a real thing. And I think that is enough evidence to, at the very least, give us fans some confidence that there are adults, not to use the overused phrase, but I'm going to use it because I don't know how else to put it. There are adults in the room now. And when I say the room, I mean the locker room. And when I refer to the adults, I mean the coaching staff. Like they have the guys playing the way a team is supposed to play if they intend to win basketball games, which we have not seen for a little while. And I just, there's a lot to point to that's impressive. There are some of the issues that we'll get to. So I guess, I don't know. I want to throw it back to you. I feel like there's like 10 different places we could start right now. What do you think? What's your gut feeling tell you is the most appropriate place to start?
I mean, it's hard not to look at the 3 games of RJ Barrett and Julius Randle and start there.
I like that.
We could say in the moment, obviously there's some key players who jumped out and we'll get to them obviously.
Yeah, we will.
Let's start with RJ first, because he is in many ways what we hope to be at least the face of the franchise in the immediate future.
Yes.
And, it's the sort of thing where game 1 obviously couldn't miss. He went 8 of 8 from the field in the first game, finished going 3 of 3 from deep. Yep. He cooled off in the second half, but he showed his size, his strength. He bullied Oladipo a few times. I mean, he was phenomenal. And if it weren't for the second half woes of the team as a whole, and also him too, and just the Pacers doing a great job of adjusting to what the Knicks were playing, things might have gone better. And then you get to game 2. And game 2 is a completely different story. And it's the sort of thing where you're seeing Ben Simmons, who this is a huge reason actually why I would love to see James Harden in a Sixers jersey. It's because I don't want Ben Simmons in the Atlantic anymore. The fact that they're what, 11, 12 and 0
he's going to make the
Knicks?
next 8 all defense teams. It's going to happen.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And the way that he matched up with RJ was just devastating. I mean, obviously he was on the floor for all 15 attempts, or at least guarding him one-on-one. But the way he was able to manipulate RJ and create so many bad shots, it just wasn't his night. But RJ was able to do other things, which is great. He
didn't let it get to him.
Right.
He still played hard defense. He was still trying to make the right play.
Mm-hmm.
I thought other than like 2 or 3 of those shots, I didn't think they were forced.
Right.
So, and he's a 20-year-old kid, and it's a learning process against a really good player. But that's, again, it's part of the process, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But, that's the sort of thing where I was hoping to see he would have some sort of bounce back game from that. And just a side note, in terms of RJ, one of the things that we were talking about in the KFS Slack a little bit earlier was this idea of, we'll talk about Randall too, but having Randall and Burks next to you if you're RJ is great. But what happens when RJ Barrett gets shut down by someone like Ben Simmons and you don't have someone else who can really create and score the way that he can? And that's why it's so important next year, whatever it may be. Again, I want to focus on the last 3 games and
we're going to try to keep it grounded today.
Absolutely, but just the idea of you could see strides in both those games of how RJ has been progressing, but he so needs that talent around him that can kind of create that level of gravity where you're taking the focus away. So maybe Ben Simmons isn't focusing all of his energy on shutting down RJ Barrett. Maybe there's someone else he's able to do, but that's the future. For right now, it was a tough game, but game 3, tonight's game, he seemed to rebound. The shot was deep,
I have a stat line right here. He was 0 for 4 from 3. The 3-point shot has not fallen. In the preseason, hasn't fallen in the regular season, but otherwise, other than those 4, he was 7 of 13 from 2. Pulled down 8 rebounds. Love to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Got 4 assists, got a steal, only 2 turnovers, 17 points. And played 38 minutes. And I believe Vork tweeted it out. He played the first 16 minutes of the game. He is Thibodeau's horse. Him and Randall, the 2 of them, but I think RJ even more. And what I don't want to get too crazy about this because we also saw Andrew Wiggins lead the league in minutes under Thibodeau, and I don't think Tibbs thought that he Wiggins was exactly helping him win. I think he felt that it was a necessity. So I'm sure that there is a little bit of that necessity here too. But I also do really legitimately feel like on this roster, Tibbs just doesn't like RJ Barrett being off the floor. And that's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure that some people will quietly question the idea of why the starters were still on the floor. in the last few minutes or so of the game when Milwaukee threw in the towel.
At this point, look, with that.
Right. Sure. Would it have been nice to see other players? Okay, that's fine. But then you also get into the territory of what happens if, say, like a 20-point lead gets quickly cut down to 12, and then you got to bring them out. Anyway, just clinch the game, and he took them out. It worked out nicely. So for RG, it's promising. Whereas where the conversation was at this point last year, or even a little bit later, where it was certainly not as encouraging.
Yeah.
And now it certainly feels like things are turning around and things are developing. And it's always nice to see when your young players are showing tangible improvement, because let's face it, we haven't seen that often as Knicks fans over the last 20 years or so. So it's very heartwarming, and it's wonderful to see.
And I got into a lot of trouble over the last however many months we haven't had basketball when I was very blunt about what I thought about RJ Barrett's rookie season. And that's because that's how I felt. But you take the work ethic and you take the talent that is there. He does have talent. Just, I think there's I guess I almost feel the need to push back against people that think he is going to be this like transcendent player. Again, that's not RJ Barrett. What he can be is what we're seeing, and it's only year 2, and it's going to be even better in year 3 and year 4 and year 5. Just a guy that could do a lot of different stuff, even if he's never going to be the best player on the floor for a good team. What I love about what you said with Randall about the gravity is like, look, the storyline for the first 3 games is going to be that Tom Thibodeau has helped Julius Randle turn over a new leaf, right? And I think to a certain extent it is that simple, but I almost think it goes a little bit deeper than that, in that there has been a conscious choice made here that the most effective way that they are going to be able to operate on offense is to put the ball in Randall's hands, which is interesting because I remember another guy that made that same decision a year ago, and he didn't last in his job for very long. Right? He did not last his job for very long. And if you go back and you watch those early games and you go back and watch these games, is that just Tibbs convincing Randall? No, I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's actually like what you opened the show with, talking about just like there's more sophisticated schemes being run on offense. There's guys moving around with a purpose. It's not like it's not like 4 guys running around with the, as chickens with their heads cut off around Julius Randle with the ball, where he feels the need to do all the stupid shit he did last year. So I do think it goes a little bit deeper. Like of all the stuff that we saw tonight, like obviously they made, 50 some odd percent of their threes. They made 59% of their 3-point attempts. So it's like, that's not going to happen a lot. I think what Randall did and what Randall has been doing is absolutely real. And I think it is going to continue. And I think there's no reason, like, why can't he play this way all year? I'm serious.
Like, I agree. I mean, listen, first of all, shame on me, us, whatever, for the idea of even having Obi starting ahead of Randall, because clearly Randall in this role is showing why it's so impressive for what he's able to do.
Yeah.
And,
but we were going off of the evidence we had.
Right. And the evidence we had was someone who loved the ball in his hands. It wouldn't move that often, would take absurd shots, just was not a cerebral player at all.
But also, there's more to it than just that, too, because it wasn't just that he was not a cerebral player. He was not accurate with the passes that he was throwing all the time. Mm-hmm. Those have been better because I think they're simpler passes, and their passes, like, he's stationary a lot. There are times where he's driving and kicking out on the move, but a lot of times he's just like there at the top of the key. Guys are moving around him. He's surveying the scene. He'll take a dribble or two once he gets like, or he'll back into a guy a little bit, but like, this is stuff he can do. Mm-hmm. And then the decision-making process for him has been kind of, I think, simplified. So again, we didn't know that was going to happen. So when we were like, piling on about like, oh, do we really have? Can we maybe put him on the bench? Like, I don't think we were being that unfair. And here he is tonight, 29 points on 17 shots. He missed his first 6 from the field.
Yeah,
and he had 29 points on 70 shots to go with 14 rebounds and 7 assists. And was 3 of 5 from deep, as per Tommy Beer, first player in Knick history to accomplish that stat line. So good job by you. Yeah, I love it, and I think we've just described the basis of the Knicks offense this year. And we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're not talking about who they might trade at the deadline or this and that. But if that's the basis of the Knicks offense, where do we go from there? Because that's where we get into the things that we were going to be yelling and screaming about on this particular podcast that we're not going to yell and scream about right now because there's really no reason to, but they still exist. What do you think is like the next most important thing that we've seen? Let's go there.
Well, before I get to that, I just want to say that the fact is with Randall too, Tibbs is the best head coach that he's had his entire NBA career. You know, going back to Kentucky, he had Calipari, who was a renowned head coach, but now he also has Kenny Payne. And when you also, it's hard for me to look at the 1-5 Kentucky Wildcats and see what they're going through and not wonder down. Like, well, no, but it's, you know, I'm sorry if anyone's a Kentucky Wildcat fan. Listen,
this is mean,
but I'm trying to understand where Kenny Payne fits into all of this, because all I'm seeing right now is a Kentucky team that is the greatest basketball program, at least collegiate wise, and in NCAA history. You
realize this is a flaming hot take. I love it. I love it. It is a flaming hot take.
No, maybe it's just from a lack of talent perspective, but we've also seen Kentucky not produce. They do, right. That's the thing. We've seen Kentucky not produce lottery talent like this past year in the 2020 draft. The first player to go was Maxey, and he went with the Sixers like 21st, I think, overall. So to me, it's the idea of if Kenny Payne is able to do this much, or at least take away that much for Kentucky, and we're starting to see some improvement from a guy like Randall and hopefully from other players as well, whether they went to Kentucky or not. That's something to be said. In terms of the third player
the third most important,
I think it has to probably be Alec Burks.
I was hoping you would go there.
You were hoping I wouldn't?
I was hoping you would.
Okay, well, I did. I took it.
He's been. So could we take? Look, it's me and Jeremy, so you know at some point we're going to zoom out. This is where I'm choosing to use our zoom out card here. This is why when we talk about team building, the fact that you could go out and get an Alec Burks, and what Alec Burks is doing, look, Alec Burks is not a 20-point per game scorer in the NBA. Let's be clear about that. But like everything Alec Burks has done, operate out of the pick and roll, make open threes, make simple passes, simple reads. Like these are things Alec Burks has always been able to do as an NBA player. This is not like revelatory stuff. And the fact that you could get a guy like this for 1 year and $6 million is why I think you for any Knick fans who are like, why didn't they go out and sign someone to a big contract this summer? It's like that. This is why, because you could get these fringe guys. And I think there is a value to maintaining a certain modicum of flexibility when you could just and this also relates to the draft too. They took Obi Toppin instead of Devin Vassell, which a lot of people I think are maybe questioning right now. Not saying that player comparison is like a perfect fit, but like to me, this pickup was so smart. And the fact that he's now doing what he's doing in this role speaks to maybe a real nice feather in the cap of this front office. And we're not talking about the trade deadline. Not going to talk about it. We're focusing on the now.
We could, but we won't.
We're not going to. There'll be enough time for that. But he's been so outstanding. And yes, he's hitting, I don't know what his field goal percentage is on the year. It's something absurd. He's not going to keep this up. But this is like he's playing like his game. And I think, again, Tom Thibodeau, we've seen this from Tibbs before, mostly on the Bulls, but a little bit, I think, with the Wolves as well. Guys coming to him and really he figures out how to use them to the best of their abilities. And I think that's what we're seeing from Burks right now.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that the first player that was signed by the Knicks, or at least agreed to coming to the Knicks in free agency, was Alec Burks. So clearly they had him targeted for a reason. We knew that there were obviously the Jazz connections, and they figured out a way where we know this player very well and we know what he can do. And to get him for $6 million is outstanding.
Yeah.
And, I mean, again, the one thing I'll say in terms of zooming out is that there will come a time where you probably don't have to worry about salary matching per se, because of not only how much money the Knicks have, but they can also afford to take on something that's worse if they want to trade Alec Burks. But you know what? Alec Burks is a member of the Knicks. We'll keep it that way for right now.
We are keeping it away for right now.
Right. And, the funny thing is, in terms of what I was saying with RJ needing that player around him, it's like, yeah, I don't see Burks being consistent, but what Burks has been doing, it's like you can't ask for more at this moment, really. And that's the ideal of like this type of performance. Imagine that every single night around RJ Barrett. And then if he had the idea of a player like Burks in a 6-man role, then I mean, it's the sky's the limit for the backcourt. At least you're starting to get there. You're filling in the pieces. So it's
not exciting. Just Barrett either, because I think a guy like, we don't have to just key on him. A guy like Knox, and even though we haven't seen him now in a couple games, a guy like Obi Toppin, like all of those guys clearly benefit from just like the ball moving around.
Yeah.
And like players moving the ball and then players moving with the ball. Like, and Alec Burks does both of those things, and he's doing both of those things really well. He's clearly has some synergy with everybody he's playing with. I mean, my goodness. I shudder to think where this team would be without him. But I am just happy he's here. We should say his stat line: 18 points. He just missed becoming the first Knick since Melo to open his Knick career with 3 straight 20-point games. Good trivia question. Again, 4 or 5 from 3. I mean, just insane stuff. 5 assists off the bench in 21 minutes. Alec Burks, how you doing? And
he's not a point guard. I know that obviously the Knicks might try to plug him in at some, but he does enough, as you were saying, enough of the reads and pick and roll, and making the smart passes out there where he can at least help with the offense. And it's not going to be this piece of garbage that we hate seeing, because the one thing I've picked up with this team is already through 3 games, they are having a blast playing together. They are sharing the ball. Yeah. They are focused. They are attentive. They care about
something. Very quickly, to go back to RJ and Randall, I was cutting some clips earlier today, and there was the play. It was the second to last offensive possession of the second quarter against Philly. So talking last night, where RJ and Randall had a moment where they had a back and forth as they were, I think it was RJ actually bringing the ball up from the backcourt, Randall alongside of him, and they had some kind of exchange, and they brought the ball up, and Randall went right into like almost like a surprise hard pick. Like it came out of nowhere, and RJ curled around it, and he got one of the 2 shots I think he made all night. Really nice, easy look. And that same thing where the 2 of them came up the court together and they had a quick back and forth exchange, and it led to just a nice 2-man game between the 2 of them, and it resulted in a bucket. I forget when it happened tonight, but I wrote it down somewhere in my frenzy of excitement. Here's the point. Those 2 guys look like oil and water last year. It was just like, of all the reasons that I wanted Randall off the team, his relationship with RJ was number 1. It seems like they're on the same page. And that what you just said reminded me of that. And I thank you for bringing that up, because this team does seem to like playing together, and like, Pinson even talked about it on the media availability yesterday, where it's like he's like, we responded to the first loss well. I thought we came in with the right attitude, and like guys are putting in the work, and like Tibbs is talking about it a lot, and of course he's going to say this, but guys are practicing hard, and like the habits are being built and all that shit. You love it. Can I pick where we go next? I want to go. Here's where I want to go. I want to go to Mitch, because I think Mitch has been outstanding, and I'm really high on Mitch, but I think he's been really good. Where are you on Mitch this season?
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. I mean, even tonight, right? It may not seem like he did a fantastic job, but he did. It's not, you have to look a little bit.
If you watch the game, it seems like he did.
He sure did. I mean, also when you're going against the 2-time defending MVP and you leave the game with only 2 fouls committed, That is fantastic. That is clear demonstrated growth, because I've honestly been seeing some people question whether these types of players can grow. Yes, they can, especially when you play against the best and you start to beat the best. It carries over into other games. And Mitch has been outstanding. There were some finishes that he had, which were great. He was just very active on the boards. He's going straight up more. I know with the Pacers game, some of those calls, at least one in particular, was a little ridiculous on Sabonis. And he's learning.
We haven't seen
more.
The reach fouls.
I know.
The I'm tired. I don't want to get in the right position, so I'm just going to swipe. We haven't seen.
And he did it in preseason. And it seemed like after that one point, it kind of just turned off, and he's been good from there. So I don't see how you can be unhappy with the performances that he's had. I can understand the numerical production where people might be kind of questioning it, but he is impacting the team around him and helping with that defense. And that's just beautiful to see.
Like I get that people want to see him like break out these like dribble moves that he does in the off season and like shoot a three or whatever, or a mid ranger even, whatever. Like that's not Mr. Robinson's value. He is one of those guys. He is. I'm not comparing him to Draymond, but like it often gets said of Draymond, he could own a game without scoring a point. Right? That's Mr. Robinson. Because on offense, the threat of his verticality, to use a buzzword, is just massively significant. And, you know, when he's out there and you just go back and you don't always pay attention to it in the moment, but if you go back and watch again, and I'll try to maybe dedicate a newsletter to it upcoming at some point, like the amount of times that opposing centers have to stay home on Mitch. It happens all the time. Because you can't leave that dude. You know, if you have and we're getting there, if you have a competent point guard running the show or somebody who could deliver an alley-oop, he played 35 minutes tonight. That's why it's not just the two fouls in 35 minutes, 9.6 boards. I thought he actually boxed out really well. I thought he was all over the glass. Even on rebounds, he didn't get, like he tipped a good number of balls, ended up with 2 steals and a block. He's just been really sound. And I don't know, again, not getting ahead of ourselves. I don't know what the contract discussion is going to be this summer. I'm thinking about it though, man. You always have that in my mind. Yeah.
Well, sorry, not sorry. At least with Mitch too. The other thing is he had 2 tough tests. He had Sabonis in game 1, who's an all-star, at least was last year and probably projects to be upcoming. And he had Embiid, who is a superstar. And Mitch is young, obviously. This whole team is young. A big problem with youth is that you're not going to be bulked up to such a degree that you will want to be there. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And he struggled a bit with some of the more bruising players. But you know what? It's okay, because the understanding here is there are tons of guys in this league who cannot hang with Joel Embiid or Domantas Sabonis. It's not like, oh, well, it's just an excuse where it's totally fine. No, but because there were moments where he was playing well. It's just the sort of thing where you have to tip your cap and say, this is just the sort of thing that will be fixed with time, maybe more personnel. We're talking maybe a little bit more about like, if you even had a Kyle O'Quinn type, it doesn't have to be Kyle O'Quinn, but just a player.
Why not Kyle O'Quinn?
I mean, sure. Of course. Who doesn't love Kyle O'Quinn? But just the idea of that type of player who can be aggressive and can exert force. Like Dwight Howard was bodying, especially Nerlens Noel. He was getting thrown around like a rag doll sometimes. Yeah. And that seems to be what the Knicks have done frequently. Maybe Taj Gibson has been has had a lower level of gravity, or lower level center of gravity. And that's been great because he's been able to hold up, but obviously he's not on the team anymore. And the Knicks will eventually need someone who can be a little bit stronger from the base. Well, but for right now,
we saw Randall tonight. Like I gotta say, he played some nice defense.
He did. The idea of going against, some of the better bigs who can score on the inside, but Randall did fine, especially because, and the Knicks only played the Bucks, I think 3 times last year, but one-on-one, the Giannis had the highest scoring percentage from the floor against Julius Randle.
It's like 80%. I'm sure,
it was 82%. And I'm sure that Julius Randle knew about that, or at least coaching said you
could
were
tell
abused by him, and he took it personally.
You could tell he took it personally,
and that's great. You want to see that. You want to see these players take it personally and feel like they have to redeem themselves and play up to the task.
It's an interesting dichotomy between the two of them, Mitch and Julius, on defense, because Julius has this thing where he doesn't jump ever for blocks. It is his thing. He got a block tonight, though. Actually, I couldn't believe it. I thought I was seeing a ghost. But at the same time, he's off ball. He's just a disaster. But on ball, especially when he doesn't have to go a whole lot of places, he's okay, and he's a big, strong dude. So I'll be curious to see moving forward how they balance, or Tibbs uses the two of them together, because obviously Mitch is this, like, not quite the queen on the chessboard. That's Giannis, but he's close. He's getting there. He's moving in that direction. And they are just so sound in this scheme where the Knicks, they know what they want to do. It's not always going to work. Sometimes teams are going to hit threes against them. So be it. Didn't happen tonight. They got the win. And we'll see, but I'm going to watch that moving forward. Last guy before we get to the point guards, Kevin Knox. I don't even know what he was 3 for 8 tonight. He was 1 for 4 from deep. I don't think his stats have been great during the season. I feel like, and again, I have looked at this team through rose-colored glasses for a very long time. I feel like I am watching a slightly, what's the best word for this? This is not the Kevin Knox that I saw on offense last year. It is a guy that looks like he can be a part of an NBA offense that can get out of its own way and maybe even do some stuff. And he's making good decisions. I think he looks the part. The shots aren't necessarily falling yet. And on defense, we've had a couple not so great moments, but I like what I've seen from Knox. Where are you at on Knox so far?
I'm around there. You want to see more, of course. Why wouldn't you? But it also seemed like in the beginning of preseason, the looks were great. They were there. He just wasn't hitting the shots, and the shot looked fine. They just weren't falling. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, he lit it up. And that's my hope, especially when someone like Quickly comes back, because they seem to have formed some sort of chemistry, and that looks great. So perhaps Quickly knows where to find him, and they can get some better looks that way. But with Knox, yes, it's this idea of he's not there yet, of course, but you can see where he's getting to, and you can see the maturation of how he can get there. And that's fine, because there's no rush. I mean, my goal for him essentially, or I guess the number one goal for Knox of a few of them would probably be just like, all you have to do is look like an NBA caliber player.
But
and
I think
it's a very low bar, and he does.
I think he does.
And he's shown effort. I mean, it's not like he hasn't shown effort in the past, but it feels like there's a renewed sense of purpose. Where there was especially one play, I think it was in the first half on defense, where he was like, I think he went straight up. And
he had a nice block in the first half.
Right. Yeah. And that was great to see. He usually has active hands. He's usually focused. His head's not going to be on a swivel, but it's better than it was before. And he seems to be engaged still.
Yeah.
So that's what you kind of look for. And again, it's going to happen eventually, maybe not to such a degree that it did playing against the Canton Charge, but it was nice to see, at least it gave a small glimpse into what can happen maybe sometime this year, potentially next year.
I love he's been putting the ball on the floor, and unlike his rookie year and last year, it's not just like I'm just going to drive into whoever happens to be there and fling something up. He's actually making decisions, and they've been decent decisions. 26 minutes for Knox tonight, 1 turnover, 2 assists to go with a steal and a block. Again, it's not the type of thing like you're going to get from the stat line so far. But so we've now talked about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, and we are between like okay with what they've done and very, very happy with what they've done on all 5 of those guys. And they're 5 important players for this team. And yet we were pretty convinced we were going to come on here tonight and talk about not only an 0-3 team, but probably an 0-3 team that had lost 3 games by an average of close to 20 points, right? And that's because of the point guard situation, which is where we'll finish up. So, I don't even know how to have this conversation because I wrote a newsletter that I wrote a Sunday newsletter today in which I basically was like, we've seen enough from Elfrid Payton. There's no use going to this well again. And I essentially said the same thing about Frank Ntilikina. I was like, it's year 4. We're seeing these little signs. And I'm like, I'm tired of looking for little signs. I'm like, when Quickly comes back, just give him the job, let him play as much as he wants. And when he tires and you need to put him on the bench, just run without a point guard and have it be Burks and RJ and Austin Rivers when he's back and Randall and whatever else. And then tonight, Elfrid Payton came out and shot, I have to read this, 12 of 16 from the field, including, gonna get this out, 3 for 3 from deep. That happened tonight, for 27 points and 7 assists. Just utterly unbelievable stuff. And not to be outdone, Frank Ntilikina, 19 minutes, 4 for 4 from deep. That accounted for all 12 of his points. There was a I don't know how many minutes the stretch was where he was just firing away every time he got the ball from 3. What's going on? I don't know what we're doing anymore. I have no words.
I mean, it just goes to show that cyberbullying can work. That's the beauty of it. Like, just get Jonathan Macri to write a scathing Sunday morning newsletter on you, and things can start to work. So, John, we need you to continue doing this every Sunday, where you just light the fire under these players, because, we know they'll see it. We'll just we'll tweet at them and chirp at them, and things will go well. For Peyton, again, I think the one thing with the point guard crop is because fans have been, and rightfully so, very vociferous about this battle. Or if you
word
want
of
to
the
call
day,
it that.
Word of the day.
We'll take it. And it's the sort of thing where I've just been kind of hanging back on Twitter and just cracking jokes because of, again, there's so little for us to parse out that it's hard to really get into the nitty gritty of the data. So I'll just, I figured might as well have fun with it in the meantime.
Yeah.
And so I've been seeing a huge amount of fans being like, just waive Peyton already. All right. Or the idea of just let go of Frank. There's nothing there, that sort of thing. And I've been quiet because it's look, guys, yes, Peyton is who he is. Absolutely. And we went on the podcast. You could call it defending the signing. To me, it was more just rationalizing that it's not a good signing, but it's the better of the shit pile. And that's what we're
no use going. I think our main point that night was this is not the hill to die on.
Right.
If you're a Knicks fan.
Right. And, you look at other teams in terms of what they've done with the point guard position. And even with Russell Westbrook right now, I mean, he's playing with an old coach. They do not look great either. There just were not many options.
0-3.
Exactly. Although he sat out tonight. But even still, if he were on this team, he would have sat out on a back-to-back night.
I was about to say, that's significant.
Right. And you want your players to be healthy because the number one ability is availability. So Russell Westbrook aside, let's start with Peyton. It's this idea of the Knicks in terms of how on fire they were around him. And yes, Peyton was obviously shooting lights out. I mean, he hit 3 threes, as you said. Well, he hit 14 all last year, and I think 46 games. So that's one every 3 games that he would hit a 3. And obviously incredibly small sample size, but it's still astonishing that he was able to do that tonight. But it's the players around him how they were able to succeed, how he was able to be with 3 shooters and then someone who could run the floor at the center position. And that's what we have been saying for so long, which is that if you can get that personnel and put him and have him lead that unit, he can actually do fine. And tonight was a testament where, yes, he shot the ball ridiculously well, but the other players around him did too. And on a night where maybe he's not doing as well, but the other players are even shooting around average of what they normally might, that's an NBA player. That's not a Shanghai Shark. That is someone who can actually help you.
There was never a question about whether Elfrid Payton was an NBA player. There was always the question remained about whether he should be an NBA player for this team.
Sure.
And this roster.
And what his role is, which is why I'm still in favor of having Emmanuel Quickley start. But you could still have someone like Elfrid Payton off the bench. But then you also have someone like Frank Ntilikina coming. I want to say it's out of nowhere, but the truth is I don't really know how out of nowhere it is. And the reason
didn't play point guard, by the way, though.
He didn't.
He hasn't played point guard yet this year. This is he's the wing. He's on the wing.
He barely brought the ball up, and things worked against. So my view on this is everyone goes to his 3-point percentage, and they look at the fact that he shot I think 32, 28, 32 the last 3 years. He's 22 years old right now, and to me, it's just like a basic misunderstanding of how the math works. It's like 32% tells me that for every 100 threes Frank Ntilikina takes, he hits 32. If you
that is what it tells me too.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
If you add 2 to those 32, right now you're hitting 34 out of 100. Yeah. It doesn't seem like a huge difference. And now we're talking about a player who is making a slight improvement to the point where at still 22 years old, he's at least becoming a serviceable 3-and-D off-ball secondary ball handler type player. Yeah. And there's value in that player. And it's why I tweeted earlier this week about how Frank, to me, if you're having this ascending contract, then somewhere around the $7.5 million mark next year really isn't outrageous, especially when you look at the other players.
We got a long way to go.
Of course. And I'm not saying this game represents that. I just want to use this game as an example.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
And the idea of if he got a decreasing or a depreciating, a declining, descending deal, so many D words, a descending deal, maybe starting around 9 instead and working down would be different. I was comparing him to point guards where if he's not going to play point guard, then it's kind of not so much pointless, but it's harder to compare him that way. The point still remains that you do not have to get rid of a guy who is shooting 34% or so. We're still a long way to go for him to get there.
Yeah.
You just need to see tangible improvement. And on a night like tonight, where he played, I think, 7 minutes in total over the first 2 games, where the first 5, he was just thrown out in the fourth quarter of a game that really was already over, basically. And then a few minutes into the next game where, again,
it was garbage time.
That was already over to begin with. You now have someone, it was a healthy night, no Dennis Smith Jr., no Emmanuel Quickley, Elfrid Payton going off. Frank's still not playing on ball, and that's okay because he's still adding value. And that is the beauty of it. You can find it with so many of these players. It's just in terms of how they're used. And if you create a better system for this offense, you create better looks. And with better looks come better shots because you know that they're going to say, we know that Frank is great from this spot. We know that Burks is great from that spot. We're going to try to optimize it so we can get them great open looks from there. And it starts to work out that way. And it's not going to be the whole season, of course, but this is a nice glimpse into all of these players and what they can provide.
Yeah, but if they're putting Frank on the wing, that inherently means they think that he could hit enough shots to be useful and keep defenses honest, right?
Well, as of right now, it means that with down a few men, that's where they see him. We don't know where with a healthy rotation where he is, but I agree. They don't see him as a penetrating guard. He isn't. There was one moment too where he could have easily taken a floater and he just didn't. And that's very frustrating to watch because you want to see that aggression.
He had several moments tonight that were frustrating where it's just like, those are the moments where, and that's why, and I've started on this train in January or February, I think. I just don't think he's an NBA point guard. I think he's an NBA player, and I think he's an NBA player that could help teams, especially in this era where, do we need a point guard? Do we not need a point guard? It's like you need guys who could draw attention and move with the ball. Doesn't necessarily need to be in a certain package, but whatever. He's a guy that they think can hit enough shots to keep defenses honest. And I think, towards the end of the preseason, I started to kind of get in this mindset that he was going to be the 11th guy in a 10-man rotation. And tonight they played 9. It was essentially a 9-man rotation tonight because it was the 5 starters, Barrett, Payton, Robinson, Bullock, Randall, and then Knox, Burks were the 2 primary, they got the most minutes off the bench. And then it was Ntilikina and Noel. And Noel, by the way, for all of the consternation, another word of the day, for all the consternation about the minutes that he was going to take from Mitchell Robinson, what is he averaging? 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 14? I don't even know. It's not a lot. And I think, like, again, Tibbs is a good coach. He's a good coach in the fact that he's doing things like, hey, Mitchell Robinson's better than Nerlens Noel. I'm going to play Mitchell Robinson more. He's a good coach in that he has a guy like Frank Ntilikina. Does the team want him? Maybe, maybe not. Does he want to be here? Maybe, maybe not. But he's coming in and he's playing his ass off. And if as was reported last night, after that game ended against the Sixers, he was out there putting in extra work. That, to me, is a testament to the coaching staff and what they're doing. And, you know, whatever they're instilling in the roster. I still think when this team is healthy, Frank is the odd man out, because once Quickly comes back and once Toppin comes back, you know, and then even if like Bullock may be shooting himself out of the rotation. Unfortunately, I feel bad saying that, but Bullock's been just kind of, he's been okay. He's been making the right plays, been doing the right things. He's been moving around, but he's not hitting his shots. And I wonder, you know, is that going to be the spot that Austin Rivers takes when he gets back?
But just sooner than later, he posts on Instagram and it seems like he's really not that far away.
Yeah, he's going to be either he took contact today or he's going to be taking contact tomorrow or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's going to be injuries, as we've already seen, Quickly and Obi. There's going to be injuries throughout the year. I don't know what they do. Payton's not going anywhere. He's going to continue to get minutes on this team. And look, he was a lot better tonight. I don't know how else to say it. He was a lot better tonight. And if he's attacking on offense like he was tonight, that is a useful player. And he does get, here's the thing with Payton, and you can watch it. He gets guarded when he has the ball in his hands, and he gets guarded out beyond the 3-point line, despite the fact that he doesn't have a 3-point shot, because defenders know that if you give him a runway, he is able to cause damage. And historically, he has done that. He has been able to do that. So he gets guarded out on the perimeter if he has the ball in his hands. Yes, guys are going to go under screens on him, but he's crafty and he could do stuff with that. The problem is when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And so to get back to what we were saying before, if you're going to run this offense essentially through Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, what is Payton doing? And we've already seen, you know, clips after clips of there's Payton hanging out behind the arc and no one's paying attention to him. And, you know, finally tonight he hit some threes, but those are probably not going to go down at this rate. So then what's the secret? The secret is either you put the ball in his hands more when he's in the game, and when the ball is not in his hands, you just got to move him around a lot. Because that's, I feel like, the only way to counter that is to just have him be moving constantly, have him be available for cuts, because that's the other part about if the ball's in Randall's hands or RJ's, theoretically, those guys are going to be able to hit a cutter on a well-timed cut. So, we were all probably too quick to throw dirt on the grave of one Elfrid Payton. We'll still take tonight with a grain of salt, but it's either way. It's good because they needed a win. They got a win. It was a really good win. And this is a great night, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And just one more thing a few more things. Elfrid Payton, his looks have been mostly catch and shoot wide open. So if you want him to take shots, those are at least the quality of the shots that are great. Obviously, maybe you have someone who can fit that role, who does it a higher percentage in terms of that they can actually do it on a more reliable basis. But it's not like he's been taking these atrocious shots from three, and it wasn't even this game as well, or it wasn't just this game. The last game he did it as well, where I think there was a corner shot that looked fine. It just didn't go in. So that's encouraging. We're also seeing more cutting. And one of the things that we mentioned, we talked about the Knox block, but we didn't talk about what happened on the other end, which is that Frank Ntilikina took the ball and hit a pull-up three-pointer.
Amazing. Unbelievable.
Who would have thought? So that sort of thing where...
Look at us.
Not me. So, it's just the fact that we're able to smile and laugh when we just saw this game it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing.
Because now, the next game is against the 3-0 Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been playing their asses off, even dating back to last year.
First place, Cleveland Cavaliers.
They're 9-6 since they made a coaching staff, and they got Beeline out and Bickerstaff in.
Point differential of 13.3.
It's astonishing. And of course, they're the ones who also benefited from the off night on Joel Embiid for a back-to-back, but that's neither here nor there. That's fine.
I didn't catch that. I saw they kicked the Sixers' ass. I did not realize Embiid was out. Oh yeah. Okay.
And Drummond did perfectly well, and he was able to avoid having to defend.
I should hope he did perfectly well.
Exactly.
So Dwight started 15 minutes, 4 for 4 from the. Oh, okay. We had a little. Yeah. I mean, let's preview this. Actually, before we preview this game, we should note very quickly that Dennis Smith Jr. I think you mentioned it before. Dennis Smith Jr. is out. What was wrong with him, by the way? Do we know what was wrong with him?
I think they said something about a leg contusion. I'd have to double check. Well, I'll double check while you're on it. But
something was wrong with him, so he was hurt. Obi Toppin is hurt. He'll be out for 7 to 10 days, so he's probably going to miss another 5 games. Quickly's out. All of these guys are hurt, which stinks. But they're basketball players, and they're tough. And they have the best, sports doctors, the whole thing. And they're going to be back before we know it. Well, whether or not I think Dennis Jr. may not be back on the court for the Knicks. He'll be back healthy, though.
Yeah, he had it was a contused left quad.
A contused left quad. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I know that we only had 1 game of Obi Toppin, so it's a little bit hard to see. But there were obviously, there's some scuttlebutt, of course, about how Obi Toppin has been used in that 1 game where he was taking all these threes, really wasn't doing much posting up, maybe wasn't cutting quite as much. I understand the uproar because you want to use him in the right role. But my question as well is, if he comes back and that's what he continues doing, how different is that role compared to what some sort of prospect would do at a place like Kentucky? Because we've seen so many of these great recruits go to Kentucky and play out of position, gain new skills doing things that make them feel uncomfortable. And we know that Obi Toppin can excel in the areas that he's great at. So you want to emphasize those, but what happens if they actually try to expand his game to the point where when he's actually able to do more, he's a more versatile player? That seems to be the time for when you can hone those skills, and now seems to be the time when he's healthy to be able to do a better job at them and develop. I
think we have to take. Everybody's worried about it because of the age, and I totally get it. And that's real. That's a real thing.
And I am too. But I'll let you go because I have something in mind. But I think you're going to say it.
Well, it's just his development curve as a player has not been traditional in that he's been a late bloomer every step of the way, including when he redshirted whatever I think his first year at Dayton. And in his freshman year, it's like he has progressed steadily all the way through. So to expect that he was not going to have to continue like this kind of slow uphill climb once he became an NBA player. Yeah. Don't worry about Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin's going to be fine. What were we going to say about Obi?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of trajectory, we talk about his age, and that's certainly a factor, but the other idea of it's not like he just discovered basketball and he's growing and there's a time constraint. He's still been developing from the age of 18, 19 years old, 22. He's going to continue doing that. So you have to kind of compare it to what would happen if he were drafted at a younger age. What would his projection look like? How might it compare? What would it be like if he played for the Knicks of old with David Fizdale and stalling of some sort? Oof. What might it look like for a team like Toronto?
Why do we have to bring that up?
Well, he's an example, unfortunately, and tonight
it is an unfortunate example.
The fact that I loved shout out to the Strickland, Alex Wolf posting about what Fizdale looked like against the Bucks when Knicks were down 38, and certainly you could probably tell that Tom Thibodeau was smiling behind a mask, or at least internally, at the idea of the Knicks winning, or maybe not. Maybe he thought like this isn't us winning by 50 at halftime, like the Clippers were losing 2 to the Mavs, so I want it to be more. Point being, with Obi Toppin, it's still hard to compare him to other prospects because of his journey. And that's what I keep going back to, in that where his development, his game needs to expand, much like every prospect or rookie or young players' games would need to expand. So I'm happy to see him doing things that can help elevate his game when the time comes. And for right now, we just need him to be healthy because chances are we're not going to see him until maybe like end of June. January.
No, listen, I know it's disappointing for fans, but injuries happen. It's like it's a calf strain. You don't want to fuck with this. He'll be fine. I think getting quickly back sooner rather than later is more important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we move forward from here. So they play the Cavs in Cleveland, we should note. So that will not be an easy game. They have a chance to go 2-2. They have a chance to go 1-3. Assuming they are not going to make every 3-pointer under the sun on Tuesday, and it's going to be more of a traditional effort. I guess, like, what are you going to be looking for going into this game? Because I'm trying to think, for me, like, I gotta say, of all the things that I'm wondering about, like, I'm starting to be like, okay, really, this, like, Randall, this is what we have from Randall now. RJ's been okay. Mitch, this is Mitch. I want to see how Elfrid Payton follows up that effort. Of all the things I'm going to be looking for heading into Tuesday, I think that's the number one thing. Which maybe is like short-sighted and maybe me living in the moment, and there are far bigger picture things and, whatever for this team. But, like, I don't know, because I've been sitting here, like, racking my brain, like, how the hell is this team going to, manufacture points without a real point guard? And if he could do, putting aside the threes, but if he could just be aggressive and moving around and, like, all this stuff, and just give them 20 minutes of that a night, that would be so huge. And I don't, and this is the last thing I'll say for me, for tonight. Everybody who's like, where is that getting us? Where is Elfrid Payton going? Whatever we went 12 for 16 from the field. Where does that get us in the long run? I'm not in that mindset. I'm in the mindset of just go out, look good, look competent, run a decent offense, and have the young players that are in this locker room feel like, hey, the work that we're putting in behind the scenes is paying off in the occasional win. And that makes a difference, and that matters. And if Elfrid Payton could help that effort, I'm here for it, So that's the only thing I want to say, and that's what I'm going to be paying attention to on Tuesday night.
Yeah, for Payton, I think it'd be different if quickly were healthy, but he's not. And there's this idea of, okay, well, if he's able to help with the development of the players around him, you're not developing Elfrid Payton. You're trying to focus on the guys who are benefiting, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's certainly in this game, it was a benefit of playing with Elfrid Payton. I'd say the biggest thing for me, one of them would sure be carryover. You want to see how, after a huge win, if they can. Is there
a letdown? Sure.
Right. But I think it's actually more about how the Knicks can contain Garland and Sexton. Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, because Sexland, as they're called, they've been phenomenal. And
do people actually call them that? Somebody brought that up to me earlier today.
I've seen it several times from multiple different accounts that it's Sexland, and I think that's great. Let's do it.
But Cleveland is not Sexland. I wrote about this recently. I dated a girl in Cleveland throughout college. Cleveland is many things. Sexland is not one of them.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's better than calling it Garten, though.
I think Garten is more appropriate. But
that's reserved for Ina, the goat of cooking. In a lot of ways.
I don't know who that is.
You don't know Ina Garten? All right, watch the Food Network.
You'll enjoy it. In my spare time, I'll watch
That's true. You have so much time to do it. Anyways, I really think that figuring a way to solve that backcourt because of how prolific they've been is something that the Knicks need to focus on, because we've seen the ability to match in terms of offense. And even with the first Cavs game, that was probably going to be a blowout. I shouldn't say a blowout. It was not going to be a fun game if the Cavs had kept all of their best players in, and they only played half of their roster against the Knicks. So if you're able to figure out a way to solve that duo, kind of neutralize the point of attack, And Drummond's going to be another tough test.
I was about to say
physicality. That's going to be a real stretch for Mitch.
Mitch is going to have to be on his P's and Q's.
Exactly. So I'd say figure out Sexland and then figure out Andre Drummond. Those are the two key things for me. And then after that, I mean, the week wraps up with you end this godforsaken year.
The year
against
wraps up. The Tampa Bay Raptors.
Yeah. Who are not the almighty Raptors or almighty Dinos that they have been in the past. And then you go back to Indiana and try to avenge the ghost that you had back on the 23rd. And then that's the week.
You're really waxing poetic tonight, I got to say.
I mean, I don't see how 2-4 is really out of reach. I think you can maybe this is just tonight's game talking, but if you can clobber the Bucks, then you can probably try to win one of those 3 games. That's my point of view.
I think 2-4 is certainly within reach. And I think if the Knicks, did I actually make a final preseason prediction?
I didn't say it publicly, but I took the over, so I'm going to go with 25 and 47.
I 1000% took the over, and I have that on record. I'm thinking, oh man.
While you're thinking, I also took Quickly at plus 3,500 for Rookie of the Year. I don't expect to win
plus 3,500,
but I thought, look, it's on the book. I might as well take it. You never know, because if Elfrid Payton gets the door, or if Quickly's playing a nice role and something happens, he's an injury away from being a starter. And I also thought earlier this week, the irony, how we talked about the path to Emmanuel Quickly and saying like, oh, well, it takes one injury for him to get playing time. And of course, the injury to the point guard rotation before Dennis Smith Jr. got hurt was Emmanuel Quickly. So if that's not a Greek tragedy, I don't really know what is.
So I'm looking at my predictions newsletter. I wrote 26 and 46.
Okay.
So 26 and 46 means one game. No, not one game. 2 games ahead of win 1 out of every 3 games pace, because winning 1 out of every 3 would result in a 24 and 48 record, if my math is correct, and I believe it is. So I am predicting that they will outpace that by 2 games. So 2-4, I'm here for it. Man, if they found a way to go 3-3, holy shit.
We're talking about the Knicks becoming buyers, not sellers. I kid. But.
I know, right? Hey, listen, man. Crazier shit has happened. Listen, we'll all enjoy this one. There haven't been many to enjoy as much as this over the last several years, especially. But this is worth enjoying because it's, it gives you hope for the future about a lot of things. And I think, again, first and foremost, people running this team seem to know what they're doing. So that's good. Anything from you before we get out of here, Mr. Cohen?
It's going to be a new year. So rest in peace to 2020, to all of you and you too, John. Have a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve, and we'll see you in 2021.
Yeah, I will see you again in 2021. And we'll have another few episodes, I think, before we ring in the new year, at least one. But everybody stay safe out there. And this was fun.
Enjoy the win. Enjoy tonight.
Enjoy the win.
Even if it's tomorrow when you will absolutely be listening to this, enjoy it. Savor it. It's beautiful.
Well said. All right. We'll see you later.